Because the evidence was weak. I've said from the very beginning, I've got over 100 jury trials. I did this for 23 years. All I do is trial consulting now. I can spot a bad case a mile away. And the first witness in this case, from the first witness in this case on, this was always about the government saying he's a bad person, which he is. He's a horrible, rotten woman beater. And as I told you last time, Agnifilo is going to get up there and say, convict him of every single count of domestic violence, but there aren't any counts.
On Piers Morgan Uncensored, an explosive legal breakdown of Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering and sex trafficking trial. Despite damning media narratives, the jury rejected all serious abuse allegations, convicting only minor counts based on travel receipts. Legal experts exposed the weak prosecution and dark jury dynamics. Let's break this down.
Of domestic violence, he did that. I told you before that they were going to sit there and say that these women enjoyed this. There was no coercion, there was no duress, and to show that one video of what happened years ago, that's what they built their entire case on. And it's horrible, but he wasn't charged with that. Racketeering, RICO is meant for particular vices, and those vices don't include shipping in prostitutes, and unfortunately, they don't also include beating your wife or your girlfriend. That's what he was. He's a wife beater or girlfriend beater. He was never should have been charged with this, never close. All the people who were wringing their hands and saying, oh, well, they must have convicted him in four counts. It's not even true. They never believed the word Cassie said. They never believed the word Jane said. That jury wasn't even out. 1 hour of deliberations, they came and said, Judge, we need to throw juror 25 off because he's not deliberating.
This exposes a jury already polarized and unwilling to buy the prosecution's narrative. Proof the case was lost before the evidence was fully weighed.
That told you there was already a group of people together who were willing to go in one direction or the other. That jury deliberated 3 hours, essentially, before they had conviction or had verdicts, which a fast verdict like that, in my experience, tells me that's clearly a defense verdict. Clearly. They came back today and it was over. It wasn't a strong case. It was a strong case in the media and all the pundits who wanted to say he's a woman beater, which he is. That doesn't equal a RICO charge.
No, well, you've been very consistent on that. I mean, given the convictions he's now received, what is his likely sentence? I mean, each count, I think, is a maximum of...
Got to give him 2 years.
It's a maximum of 10 years on each count. So what do you think you'll get?
Yeah, but the feds are different. First of all, he's convicted of procuring a prostitute. If we're going to start throwing music moguls and billionaires in prison for procuring prostitutes, we're going to need to expand the prisons. We're going to have to get, alligator Alcatraz fired up. But, under the guidelines, he has no criminal records, basically. So he should get the minimum sentence, which is 2 years, and they could screw him over and run him bow-legged and do him consecutively. There's no reason for them to do that. I expect at 1 o'clock the judge is going to give him bail. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, there's very few people in federal prison right now for these charges, so I would be surprised if he didn't get bail, and he should get the minimum, because that's what they're not going to look at. Beat up Cassie. That's not relevant.
No, it's irrelevant. But let me ask you this, on a technical point, can the time that he served in prison then be removed? Say he gets 2 years to run concurrently on both counts, so he serves 2 years. Would they remove time served, or is that irrelevant?
The judge can do whatever the judge wants to, but he gets his credit. In feds, it's day for day, so he gets $1 for every dollar he put in. So he's 7 months into this already. So if they run him concurrently, he's looking at probably a 20-month guideline, and you knock off 7, and there's very real chance that he's not ever going to see a federal prison. That's if it doesn't get if the president doesn't do something with it, because this is the kind of thing that you can see someone granting a pardon on. I mean, it's the White Slave Trade Act. That's real difficult to sentence somebody on the White Slave Trade Act in 2025, just from a practical standpoint.
Okay.
The government failed miserably.
Yeah, well, they clearly have. Ariel Mitchell-Kidd, you represent a number of women in civil cases against Sean Combs. What is your reaction to this verdict?
Well, I think it's important that we discuss the lack of diversity that was on the prosecution team. That was probably my most concern when I faced them, when I had a hearing for a motion to quash during the grand jury testimony. I was very concerned when I was looking across from me at 6 white women and them not being able to grasp just exactly how to convey what has occurred to a jury and being able to relate these things to a jury. Of course, my clients are very shocked at all of this. I am shocked. I'm actually very shocked at how they were able to reach the transportation aspect, but not the other 2 charges, because one kind of flows with the other.
Well, they don't though, really, do they? Because the transportation is that you're transporting people illegally across state lines for the purpose of prostitution. But that doesn't mean there's any coercion. And in fact, they have rejected all the charges, which would then lead on to a coercive situation. No sex trafficking.
You can't cut me off and let me not finish my statement.
Sure.
So in reference to, first of all, the bar they have to meet. It's a very, very high bar in criminal court. It is beyond a reasonable doubt. So of course it's clear that he did these things, transporting people for prostitution, the prostitutes, like you just said, the Punisher, who you'll have later, and other men who have said they were transported, as well as the women who said, the Jane Does who said they were also transported for this reason. However, when we talk about the coercion, I thought the elements were met. If you are asking me where I think the prosecution fell short, was I think taking 6 weeks to put on their case was a mistake. It was overkill. I think had they shortened and streamlined their case, maybe in a 3-4 week at max point, they would have been successful.
And when you say the prosecution team wasn't diverse enough, what exactly do you mean? What are you saying?
There were 6 white women, so there was not any other voice other than a white woman's voice being heard. There was not a man's voice, a man's perspective.
Highlighting the prosecution's lack of racial and gender diversity reveals blind spots in strategy and connection to the jury's lived realities.
Of any race, let alone any other race, especially a Black voice, considering just how, I don't even know what the word, impactful is not even a good enough word to describe Diddy's, I want to say impacts, but that, again, that's not even a good enough word. His chokehold, I'll call it, on the Black community. So when I look at, like, for example, R. Kelly, who, in my opinion, didn't do half as much or a quarter as much as Diddy did, for him to be in jail for 25 years and Diddy to essentially be getting possibly 10 to 20 years, 10 years max on each count, I don't understand it.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble begins. The IRS is now ramping up enforcement for those who missed the April deadline or still owe back taxes. Well, today's sponsor, Tax Network USA, can still help. If your books are a mess, if you're self-employed, or if you're a business owner, Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track quickly. They say the IRS is applying enforcement pressure at levels they've never seen before. But even after the deadline, it's not too late to take control. The consultation is completely free. Acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's tnusa.com/peers. Let Tax Network USA make the next move, not the IRS.
I think what Diddy did
could it be, Ariel?
And there was more evidence.
Could it be, Ariel, that we're just in different times? That when R. Kelly went down, we were still in the kind of full flow of the Me Too movement, the Time's Up campaign. There was a kind of, real zealous desire to put bad men away for long periods of time, Harvey Weinstein and others. And that the mood has changed somewhat now, and that people listen to the evidence, particularly with Cassie Ventura, where, she settled with Diddy for, a lot of money, many millions of dollars, had her rent paid, that she, in all the text messages that were leaked, carried on sending him very loving text messages, talking openly about wanting to do the freak-offs. The Punisher, who I'm going to interview again a little later in the show, you know, when I interviewed him, he was very persuasive that everything that he was involved in was not only consensual, but Cassie was the one driving it all. She was the one paying him. She was the one organizing everything. Diddy just sat in the corner watching them.
But let's be for real. Cassie didn't have her own money. So if that was the case, why did her parents need to take out a loan to pay Diddy for that $20,000?
But my question is,
so
whether I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying,
and this was her thing to
okay,
do.
but Ariel, you're missing my point. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying, do you feel like there's a different mood now about these cases?
I was about to say, I was trying to get to what your question was, which is, I would hate to think that the application of the law is on the whim of the attitude of the people. So that's what you're implying, that because the wind has changed, there's an inappropriate application of law. And I would hate to think that we live in a society where that is occurring.
Okay. Bruce Rivers, I mean, you were very confident that he was going to go down to prison for the rest of his natural life. That is clearly not going to happen. So how do you feel about this verdict?
Well, I think the case was overcharged to begin with. And what the defense did in this case, they really focused on the free will of Cassie Ventura. When you have somebody that's a hanger-on, somebody that is getting something out of this, as opposed to somebody who's being forced into something, you know, that's where I think the defense really won the day. And, you know, I was going basically on the sensationalistic nature of the conduct, because it really is bad. But when you really apply, I just tried one of these RICO cases here in Minneapolis on a gang case about a month and a half ago, and it's really easy to prove. But the thing about it is here, the court can use some of this acquitted conduct in sentencing.
The defense may have won the battle, but the war isn't over. Acquitted conduct could still heavily impact sentencing, shifting the narrative to what punishment Diddy could still face.
And so it's the final chapter hasn't been written. You know, I know
he may still get a substantial prison sentence, you think?
He could. He could. The average person wouldn't, but the average person doesn't have all this other conduct. You know that. You know.
But how much of that is relevant to what a judge may decide should be a sentence? I mean, I don't think this judge is going to. I mean, the judge, for example, can't bring in the appalling beating video because the statute of limitations is over for that, right? It's not even relevant legally.
Oh, sure it is. All the conduct of Diddy throughout this whole thing is relevant. You know, the judge will take into consideration the whole picture of Diddy, not just the offense for which he's charged. You know, he's got what I think he's like 7 months.
This verdict didn't just shake the entertainment world. It laid bare the limits of prosecuting powerful men with complex, messy personal lives under racketeering laws ill-suited for such cases. Jury skepticism, weak evidence, and strategic missteps all played a role. But the story isn't finished. Legal experts warn sentencing could still bring serious consequences. What do you think about this legal saga? Drop your take below and join the conversation.